two parts, district designated fund and international fund. So annual fund is one of the ways to contribute to the Rotary Foundation. Next slide, please. Now, this is one of the very unique slide, and it addresses a very unique approach by the Rotary International, and this approach is highly respected by those organizations which monitor the different charitable organizations, because Rotary Foundation is probably the only foundation who has got the minimum possible, bare minimum managerial expenses, bureaucratic expenses or whatever. And why do we have minimum possible managerial expenses? It is because we have got this unique system of share. Whatever we contribute to the Rotary Foundation during this year, this amount will be fixed in some safe securities, and those safe securities will be released along with the profit after 3 years. And after 3 years, the profit generated will be utilized for the managerial expenses, and our contribution in its entirety will be utilized on the projects for which we have donated that amount. Little bit of managerial expenses are allowed during some major grants, but most of the amount, 99% of the amount at times, is utilized on those projects which we have allocated while giving that donation. Next slide, please. Similarly, this cash flow, when Rotarians contribute to the Rotary Foundation, all the avenues through which we contribute to the Rotary Foundation, may it be directed gift, may it be annual fund, may it be endowment fund, it all goes ultimately to the Rotary Foundation. We already talked about it. Next slide, please. Now, what is an endowment fund? We all know that endowment fund are the gifts which Rotary Foundation makes it. Your gift to the endowment fund will keep the Rotary Foundation strong well into the future, providing a continuous stream of income that will fund the program in perpetuity. Now, endowment fund in itself is never utilized, but the profits generated from the endowment fund are utilized for upcoming projects and for the managerial expenses. So the amount is saved, fixed for a long term to be utilized at some distant future. Next slide, please. Again, investments in the endowment fund are, the contribution goes to the endowment fund, and return on the investment is utilized for spendable earnings into our programs and TRF operating expenses, as already told, what I was calling as managerial expenses. Next slide, please. Now, only up to 4% of some grants, amount of the grants can be utilized as the general expenses. Next slide, please. Now, Polio Plus Fund. Now, this is one of those funds which is very dear to our heart, because you all know that polio remains prevalent in our society, and we are the only two countries left in this part of the world, Pakistan and Afghanistan, and we all need to generously contribute to the polio funds. Now, this amount contributed to this fund is also channelized to the Rotary Foundation, and we get a proper recognition for the polio funds. Next slide, please. Now, these are the different types of projects, 7 areas of focus where we can utilize our foundation. Next slide, please. Now, we can contribute by donating to the foundation approved project, and we can give to the projects within our community where we want to spend the money through the Rotary Foundation. We can channelize it through the Rotary Foundation. Next slide, please. Next slide. We can give through recurring givings, and we can pay through. The only thing, sometimes people ask that we want to contribute and how to contribute. Only we need to remember 3 words: the Rotary Foundation, and that's it. Those are the 3 words which need to be mentioned and highlighted on the manager's check or demand draft, which is ultimately to be sent to the fiscal agent. So just remember 3 words: the Rotary Foundation, and your money is into the right hands. Next slide, please. Next slide. Now, other ways to give out these are the ways, but probably they are not relevant here. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide, please. Recognition. Now, Rotary has got a very unique way of recognizing whatever contribution we give to the Rotary Foundation, Rotary recognizes us in one way or the other. Next slide. Now, for example, those who contribute $100, they are called Rotary Foundation sustaining members. That to be a benefactor, you have to give at least $1,000. To be a Paul Harris Fellow, you have to be contributing at least $1,000. The members of the Paul Harris Fellow Society, they have to contribute $1,000 on yearly basis, and they also get a pin